Hey there, welcome back to Common Knowledge, the show where I look at some common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you if they are good in Pauper. If you've watched the show before, you can see that they have now added the Avatar cards into the Scryfall set here. I mean, it's been out for you for a while now, but that just shows how far ahead I record some of these. But let's get into it and see what our first common card of the day will be. It is Ambush Crotic. Pretty sure that's how you pronounce that. Ambush Crotic is 5 and a green for a 5/5 insect. It's got trample, and whenever this creature enters, return another creature you control to its owner's hand. These there are creatures and effects like these that are pretty good in Pauper. You see Dreamstalker in blue, or you see Core Skyfisher or Glinthawk, those kinds of cards that want you to return, that force you to return something, but you often want to return it because you get to play it again, whether it's a creature or whether it's a permanent, or in Glinthawk's case, I think it's an artifact. But the reason you play those and the reason you don't mind playing those in Pauper is because those cards are incredibly cheap. Glinthawk is 1, Core Skyfisher is 2, Dreamstalker is 2. There's so many cheap effects that using the creature to come in and bounce something back to your hand isn't that big of a deal because you usually have mana, enough mana to cast it again. This is 6 mana for this effect. And sure, you get a much better creature off of it. You get a 5/5 trampler instead of a 2/3 flyer or a 2/2 flyer, or a Dreamstalker's a 1/5, I think. But 6 mana just prices this right out of being able to do those kinds of lines that you see in some Pauper decks. It's also not really the right color for a lot of those decks. You want those decks to be in blue or black or white. Green is, I guess green could work, but yeah, I think this is overall just a little too pricey for not enough of an effect, and we'll give this a 2.8. Card number 2 is Alchemist Retrieval. It's a single blue mana for an instant. It's got Cleave, which is 1 and a blue. You can cast the spell for its Cleave cost. If you do, remove the words in square brackets. Well, let's read the words and see what's in brackets. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand is the non-bracketed version. But return target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand is is the bracketed version there. So that's kind of interesting. We were just talking about it with the last card, that you could use this in some kind of bounce strategies to pick up things and play them all over again. So this is a 1 mana thing that bounces a non-land permanent to your hand, which is cool because you can do enchantments or artifacts, things that have ETB triggers on them, your Lembuses, your Eager Wellsprings, your Cryogen Relics, all that kind of stuff. But you could also double this. If you spend the 1 in a blue, then it's not an unsummon. It's better than an unsummon because unsummon can only do creatures. But you get kind of an interesting bounce effect. That's for against your opponents. Like you can use it to bounce something of theirs. That's pretty interesting. I kind of dig this. I mean, you kind of want this effect on a creature so you can keep the creature bouncing stuff happening. And then so you also get a body at the end of the day, so it doesn't feel like you're missing out on stuff. But I dig this as a tempo/removal spell that mainly can continue on with your self bounce strategies. I like this enough that I'm going to write its name down, and I'm probably going to buy myself 4 copies just to have it. Alchemist's Retrieval. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of okay. I don't hate that at all. I haven't seen it be played in Pauper. I'm going to guess that It's mainly just because we have better cards on the whole than something like this. But I think this is perfectly playable in Pauper. I'm gonna give this like a 5.4. It's also got a double feature version if you prefer the black and white cards, or very much don't. It depends on the card for me. I think it's cool with something like Duress, cards that are black or white to begin with, but when the card's blue, I like it a little bit less. I mean, it's got a cool look to it for sure, but I'd rather just see the full art there. Pretty good card, and one I was not familiar with. I didn't play during Innistrad. Or actually, did I? Crimson Vow? Yeah, okay. I played like the tail end of Crimson Vow before like the big shift and like the post COVID all those sets finally rotated. So I played a little bit of Crimson Vow, but I was not there when Crimson Vow started. Anyway, let's talk about Vile Deacon, which is 2 and 2 black, or 2 and 2 black. There you go. For a 2/2 human cleric, whenever this creature attacks, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of clerics on the battlefield. Pretty normalish card. There are plenty of clerics at common, but I don't know if they're quite enough to make a real deck worth it. And also, enabling this card, you're spending 4 mana on a 2/2, which can very easily get lightning bolted before it even is able to pile on the stats from this effect. And even when it doesn't have any keyword. It doesn't have trample or first strike or something that would help it to get through with that damage, or at least force bad blocks by the opponent. So if you are going up against tokens or little creatures or something, or sacrifice decks, they're just going to be able to block this thing all day. So I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on that one. But I think I like the art. I like the idea of it. I like clerics. I've been thinking about making a cleric commander deck at some point, but I don't think this would go in there either, as you just have some better options that aren't so fragile, or at least dependent on so many other factors. So I don't love it there. Let's go ahead and give this thing a. I'll give it a 2. It's maybe a little too high, but I'll give it a 2. Have we've done Squire's Lightblade, right? Because I talked about the Leonin cards that can work with this. But I like Squire's Lightblade. I think that's a good card. Impossible Inferno is 4 and a red for an instant. Impossible Inferno deals 6 damage to target creature. It also has Delirium. If there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. It's kind of okay, I guess. 5 mana for 6 damage, but only to a creature. You have to have Delirium if you want this to semi-replace itself. Exiling in red is probably one of the closer things you get to real card draw. I don't know. This is a very normal Magic card in that it's a slightly overcosted red card that just does damage to creatures. If you want to play with Burn in Pauper, you're not going to play this because you want spells that can go to the face. This one does not, and it never will. I don't think, like, the Delirium being able to exile a card is cool, but for 5 mana, I just don't think it's efficient enough for really any red decks in Pauper that would ever want this. So let's go ahead and give this a. Is it better than the last card? Well, no, sorry. It's better than the Vile Deacon, I guess. So let's go ahead and give this like a 2.3. Next up is Red Tiger Mechan, another card from Edge of Eternities. Red Tiger Mechan is 3 and a red for an artifact creature. It's just a robot cat. It's a 3/3. It's got haste. It also has warp for 1 and a red. So you can cast this card from your hand for its warp cost, for that 1 and a red. And then you exile this creature at the beginning of the next end step. and then you can cast it from exile on a later turn. I use this card to pretty good effect in my pre-release for Edge of Eternities. It was cool to have a card that you could cast twice, an artifact. My deck was very built around artifacts entering play, so to have essentially 2 artifacts come into play, because this will exile itself. But also just to have a nice beefy creature on turn 2 that you can play and get in for some damage, and then have another creature that can come in later that could possibly force some difficult decisions for the opponent. Worked really nice and limited. Worked pretty cool for pre-release there. Would it work in Pauper? I don't know. It's pretty normal. It's at the end of the day, it's kind of just a 3/3 with haste, and that's not all that great. But you might be able to make an argument that it could work in some kind of aggressive burn deck, being a 3/3 that you put out on turn 2. And then, it gives you a form of card advantage in some way, in that it gives you an extra card that you can play from exile on a later turn. So when turn 4 comes around and you go, oh, well, I've used most of my spells. Well, hey, you got another card just hanging out in your exile zone. He's okay. He's perfectly okay, but he doesn't really have enough impact. I think he needs maybe another keyword, or needs to do something when it comes into play, or maybe when it dies or leaves the battlefield. That'd be kind of cool, like a leaves the battlefield trigger with the warp. That could be kind of cool. And there are some cards that do that at higher rarities in Edge of Eternities. But for this little common card, he's okay, but nothing all that special. I'm going to give him his power and toughness, and I will say it's a 3.3. Moving on to our next one, it is Audacious Infiltrator, which is 1 and a white for a 3/1 dwarf rogue. This creature cannot be blocked by artifact creatures. He is from Aether Revolt, which is a set that has a lot of artifact creatures in it, so it makes a little bit of sense. Artifacts are certainly popular in Pauper, but I don't think they're not so ubiquitous that this guy would see play. He wouldn't even show up in a sideboard, because he's so specific to what he wants, and even then, it's a 1 toughness creature. I think you'll often just see this guy die at some point. But even the artifact decks generally have a couple of creatures at least that aren't artifacts that would still be able to block this guy, and with no other special skills. I don't think he really ranks in a Pauper conversation. Let's go ahead and give this guy a now I just keep thinking about the Deacon, because I think all the cards we've seen are kind of better than the Deacon. I'm going to give this a 2.3, I guess. No, I'll give it like a 2.1, just slightly better than the Deacon. Vengeful Creeper is 4 and a green for a 5/5 plant elemental. It's got Disguise for 5 and a green, so you can cast this card face down for 3 mana as a 2/2 creature with Ward 2, and you may turn it up at any time for its Disguise cost. So why would you want to pay more? Why would you want to pay 3 to put this on the table and then pay more than what the creature costs to flip this? It must be pretty good, right? Well, when this creature is turned face up, you destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Wow, I really thought that was going to be spicier. Yeah, I mean, it's a 5/5 with a Naturalize on it. I mean, the cool thing about Disguise, in the same way that Morph before it worked, or is that having being able to flip a card is this weird rules loophole, kind of, where it works at instant speed and yet also is non-interactable in a way. It can't be responded to at instant speed like that, I'm pretty sure. There's something where it's like, when you flip this, you get to flip it. You like they don't have a chance to respond to you trying to flip. The flip is this kind of weird free action you get. So in that instance, it's kind of cool as this even better than split second style naturalize. And sure, you get a 5/5 body on that, so maybe you attack with this and then flip it over, destroy something of an opponent's, and get your 5/5 in there. Maybe your opponent is swinging in with something decently big, and you're able to flip this, destroy something on their side, and get a big blocker. It is kind of nice that even when this card costs 5 generally, that you have the option to play it as a creature for 3. I think that's always been a cool thing with morph cards and disguise cards, or cloaking cards that you also saw in Karlov Manor. That having that also gives you a kind of form of modality that, I could always play this on turn 3 for 3 mana. I have a creature in my hand that works for that. Or if you have other things to play, you can continue to hold off on this and play it later. If you play this vanilla, if you don't play the face down and do the flip stuff, then you're paying 5 mana for a 5/5, and that's not very good, especially in green, where you would want a lot more to happen on that. But I don't think I would ever want to pay 6 for a naturalize. That just seems like, even with the more or less uncounterability, I just don't want to pay that much for a naturalized style effect. So we'll give this a 2.1, 2.2. I'm giving a lot of stuff around. I think I really just need to knock down that the hell was that thing? The black, the deacon, the vile deacon. I need to knock that vile deacon down so I have more of the scale to play with today. Yeah, I don't know. Vengeful Creep is all right, but I'm not really a fan. Katerin Brute, I think that's how you pronounce Katerin, is 2 and a black for a 2/2 horror mercenary. You can pay 2 and tap it to search your library for a mercenary permanent card with mana value 2 or less. Put it on the battlefield and then shuffle. From Mercadian Mass Block, where they had some of these mercenary, and then the rebels also were a similar kind of mechanic where they could tutor up. It's cool to have basically a creature that can tutor for other creatures. Now it can only tutor for creatures that are worse than this one, which, I mean, worse might be the wrong word there, but lower mana value than this one. And I've always found them to be a little slow, a little clunky, especially now. They were probably much better back in Mass Block. They would have a little bit more utility these days in that with Outlaws of Thunder Junction, mercenaries are listed as outlaws. So if you have any sort of outlaw list in Pauper, having a card that can tutor for more outlaws for you could be okay. So this card might have gotten a little bit more life, but it's still a very slow effect. 3 mana for a 2/2 is kind of whatever. And then having to keep it on the table for a whole turn where somebody could just knock this out if they were scared of it. And I don't think they'd really be all that scared of it. I'm trying to think of what 2 mana mercenaries there are out there that you'd really want to be tutoring for. I'm not coming up with any off the top of my head right now. If you have your favorite 2 mana mercenary, in fact, you know what? Let's check it out just for fun. Let's say mercenary. It's got to be legal in Pauper, of course. And mana value is equal to 2. We got 10 of these. Are any of these good? Things can sack lands to do. Yeah, that's not very good. That one searches for other mercenaries, which I don't know. I guess that could be an interesting chain for you. Sacrificing a goblin regenerates this guy. The Spider-Man card, 2/1 with lifelink. 4 mana deals the damage to an opponent. That's not great. I did remember Spineless Thug. I did. Not this art. I like this art, but my favorite art is this 7th edition one. Oh, look at that guy. All that for a 2/2 that can't block. Not a very good card. Silver Deputy might actually be an okay one. Entering the battlefield, search your library for a basic land or desert, put it on top so it can get you a land. You know, it doesn't go in your hand. If it went in your hand or on the battlefield, that'd be incredible. But he's okay. Yeah, the rest of these are kind of bad. A 1/1 flyer, a tapper. Yeah, a tapper's okay, I suppose. Yeah, none of these I would say are very good, which really devalues something like this. Um, Although I guess it also could get. Sorry, indulge me one more time. We're gonna go with legal in Pauper, and we're gonna go with changeling, and mana value is equal to 2. Are there any good 2-mana changelings out there? Um, yeah, Blades of Elisvel could be interesting as a way of getting. Did it have to be creatures? No, just a mercenary card, and this counts as a mercenary. So that'd be kind of cool in giving yourself a power boost there. That's all right. Um, Glade Walker's not terrible, but then you'd have to go splash into green. Um, just a 3/1. Mass Vandal's a really good card. That is used in Pauper, both main boards and sideboard. So that's probably your best bet at this point. The rest of these are all pretty normal. I mean, this is a removal spell, or if you have something big enough, it's something that boosts your own power. This can filter your mana. I guess there are a couple of cards, but I wouldn't say any of those are exciting enough to really make Katerin Brute something that I would really want to play. I'm gonna give this a 3, I guess, only for the potential. And I don't even necessarily think the potential is all that much there. You'd have to combo it. Combo is a strong word. You'd have to synergize it with other cards that care about outlaws. And I'm trying to think of cards that would work like that in Pauper already. I'm not going to go through another search for you on this one, but I could see something that, when an outlaw comes into play, an opponent loses his life, and you're able to continue to tutor up outlaws, mercenaries that count as outlaws that you can then play. There might be something there, but it's a little too roundabout to get to something like that. Orzhov Cluestone is 3 mana for an artifact. It taps for white or black. That is Orzhov mana. And you can pay Orzhov mana, white and a black, and tap it, sacrifice this artifact to draw a card. The Cluestones are fine, I guess. I don't know if you'd really ever play them in Pauper with the signets available, and I also wouldn't play the signets in Pauper. There's ramp in Pauper for sure, but not so much in the way that you need mana rocks. I don't see a whole lot of mana rocks in Pauper unless you're doing something that's less about the mana and more about having artifacts on the field. I don't know. They picked my favorite one. This is Orzhov. That's my guild, but I don't think this will rate very highly. Let's go ahead and give it a 2.7. This should be our final card of the day. Yep. And it's Infernal Scarring. It's 1 and a black for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. When enchanted creature gets +2/+0 and has, when this creature dies, draw a card. That's okay. Like a little power boost for your creature. It's going to get more attention from your opponent. They won't want to let it in because it's going to do more damage to them, but they also don't necessarily want to kill it because then you get to draw a card. It's still it's less of a 2-for-1 when your creature dies because it's more of a 1-for-1 because you get a card back. That's okay, but like the problem with most auras, your opponent can respond to the target of this and just kill the creature, and then they both go to the graveyard, and then you got nothing. They could also exile your creature, and that's not the creature dying, so you don't get the card. I think most of the time you would get the card from your creature dying off this. There's some exile in Pauper, but it's not so prevalent that I think you'd often get the card. But is that really worth it, spending 2 mana for a little power boost and then a 1 card later? I don't think so. I think it's a little I think it's a little underwhelming, if you ask me. And if you're watching this, you are asking me in a way. I'll give this a 2. And I'll give you one bonus card today. How's that sound? It's Goblin Sledder. Hell yeah, something from Onslaught. Goblin Sledder is a single red mana for a 1/1 goblin. You can sacrifice a goblin. Could be this one, doesn't have to be. And target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is a good card. This just is a good card. If you're playing goblins in Pauper, which isn't like a meta deck or anything like that, but there have been, and I believe there will continue to be goblin Pauper decks and goblin Pauper decks that are created and built and played. So a card that's banned in Pauper is Atog, which is similar in that it's a creature that you can sacrifice a thing. In Atog's case, it's artifacts, and your Atog gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And so you can stack that a bunch and really get in with some crazy damage if you wanted to. Goblin Sledder's interesting though, in that you can sacrifice any goblin, but also you can target the creature. It's not even the Goblin Sledder that gets the +1/+1. So you are able to deny your opponent a lot of blocks in that way. You know, if they block one of your goblins, I don't know, let's say you got 10 goblins on the board, they try to block one of them, well, you can sacrifice that goblin and put the +1/+1 on another creature, on one of your other goblins, one of the other 9 that got in. And so you're still doing the same amount of damage. It really makes it difficult for them to block. Or, you know, maybe they are going to try to block this guy instead to stop you from continuing to do this turn over turn, but this guy's a 1/1 and you can sacrifice him in response as well. So I think he's a cool card. I don't know if he shows up in those lists anymore. I think there probably just are goblins that end up outpacing him a little bit in the damage category. But I kind of like him. He's a real classic little guy here. Goblin Sledder, I'm going to give him a straight up 5. I think he's just playable in Pauper, and I'd like to see goblins make more of a comeback and this guy be part of that squad. I think that could be cool and nice for the Pauper format. Not just burn stuff, but like actually having aggressive red decks that are more like goblin decks. I like goblin decks. They're cool. Anyway, I think that is good enough for today on Common Knowledge. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.